Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So with 2020 about to wind down, I figured it was high time for us to do a best of 2020 video. And by the time I pulled out all my products, I realized there's a lot to talk about. So I'm actually going to split this up into 3 separate videos. This first one, today's video, is going to be complexion products, base products, eyebrows, concealers, eye primer, just everything that you put, well, everything that's on my face right now. And then I'm gonna have a separate video dedicated just to eyeshadows, and then another video that's dedicated just to lip products. I was able to narrow those down into categories and sets, but it's gonna take a while for me to talk through all of them. So for today's video, we're just gonna focus on the basics, gonna get some nice blush, bronzer in there, highlighter, eyebrows, all of that stuff. So if you're interested in seeing what I put on a regular basis and what I've been really loving from 2020, then just stick around. So I'm going to just run through the products in the order I would put them on my face so you guys can also see as I put them on my face. Let's go ahead and dive into the first step, which is eyeshadow primer. So this is my trusty Too Faced 24-hour eyeshadow primer. And it's kind of funny because I feel like throughout this year, I have been trying to replace this product. So let me just show you guys it. It is a very liquidous primer compared to, say, the Urban Decay primer or the Hourglass primer that I've been using more recently. That said, I think because it's so liquidous, you can really apply a thin layer and get it to be pretty sheared out without any issues. You're not gonna have any clumping. It's not gonna be challenging to shear it out. So I've found this to be remarkably kind of the best primer that I've used thus far, even though I feel like I've been trying to find a replacement for it for a while. So I know that's not the most glowing recommendation, but it's stood the test of time. And this is a primer that dries down relatively quickly. So right now I can feel that it's still kind of sticky, but in comparison to a lot of other primers, notably the Hourglass Veil Primer, it does take a lot less time to settle down. And I do find that when I have this on, shadow does just apply more easily and stays vibrant longer. So definitely would recommend this, use this for the entire year, despite my best efforts otherwise. So next up we have brows, and I have to give it to the Tom Ford Fiber Brow Gel in the shade Espresso. This brow gel really just changed my eyebrow game tremendously. So prior to this, I always just used an eyebrow pencil. So I've tried all sorts of different eyebrow pencils, but I had never really used brow mascara regularly. I had used my Glossier Boy Brow on top of eyebrow pencil, but this is the first product I've ever used that's really just a one and done eyebrow product. You really don't need to have pencil. I mean, you can if you want, but the fact that the fibers in here really fill in the sparse areas means that you can really just get away with this one product. And I've had this for now over 8 months or so, and this is still my first tube and it's still going strong. So would definitely recommend, even though it's $54, way more than all my other brow products combined, but it really has longevity and works very well. So I will say though, in terms of application, you have to be careful. Definitely remove any excess product, because if you don't, it can get a little bit clumpy. This is a product that I would say, because it is much more intense than your typical brow mascara, as in it can really fill in sparse areas, you need to be careful not to go too ham with it. I find just one thorough pass is best. Don't try to go over it multiple times. You can do that, but you might start looking a little bit like Groucho Marx if you're not careful there. So I'm just gonna carefully go through this. It's a little hard to talk while doing this, but there we go. And then it takes a little bit of time to dry down, especially when you get a new tube. It's gonna feel pretty wet when you first apply it, but it does dry down, and once it does, your eyebrows do get a lot more volume back. It might feel kind of slicked back initially, but that's going to go away. And I would just say my one caveat with this product is there is a bit of a learning curve, and honestly, even for me now, kind of 8 months later, it's sometimes hit or miss for me. I would say this product, when done well, i.e. you applied enough product but also didn't put too much product on, it will make your brows look better than any other product, because it'll make them still look really natural since you have all of your existing, eyebrow hair shape and all of the individual hairs will be visible. Unlike with a brow pencil where you kind of just block out a shape behind your hairs. But that said, it can be very easy to go overboard or underboard, in which case it won't necessarily look as good. So definitely a little bit less control than what you might get with a brow pencil, but on the whole, excellent eyebrow product and would highly, highly recommend. I will mention though that I have an honorable mention in the brow department, and that's these two products together. And this is the Hourglass Arch Brow Pencil in the shade Soft Brunette and the M Cosmetics Micro Fluffing Brow Cream in the shade Espresso. And these two together kind of create a more reliable finish compared to just the Tom Ford by itself, but you do need to use both products. So I would say with this Arch Brow Pencil, it's a really excellent brow pencil that doesn't apply too much product, but kind of just creates enough shape and shading in your eyebrow area such that you can then go in with a brow mascara and then kind of fluff up the brows. And this is a really sleeper hit in my opinion, because I did not expect to like this product that much. I haven't heard many people talking about it, but I really, really enjoy this brow mascara. It has such a unique wand on it. Let me just show you guys. It's a tiny, tiny wand, very, very thin, but that means you just take out the correct amount of brow product and you don't have to worry about going overboard, but you also don't have to worry about not having enough product. I think that just keeps the brows really light. And this product too really does fluff up your brows. It gives them a bit more volume, some more body. So you just have that really nice youthful brow look with this. Of course, this will not fill in the sparse areas by itself, so hence why you should pair it with a brow pencil. But I've really been loving this combo. And my only caveat would be, I think Soft Brunette was far too light of a shade for me. So if you do buy this, I would recommend the Espresso shade and the M Cosmetics brow cream, but I would recommend a darker shade for the Hourglass. But very much been loving that product, and in fact it's made me kind of question whether I really need to repurchase my Tom Ford once this runs down, but I think we still have enough longevity from this guy for me to wait a little bit before making a decision there. Alrighty, so now that we have the brows done, the next product I normally go in with is my concealer. And this has definitely been by far my favorite concealer, honestly, of the past few years. So this is the Glossier Stretch Concealer in the shade G8. This is the new pot that I got around Black Friday this year. So still nice and clean. This has just been an amazing concealer for me. I think it has a slight bit of brightening, but overall is quite consistent with the shade of my skin. And I just like to put this around my under eyes, around my mouth, and then sometimes on my nose as well, and then also anywhere else where I have a little bit of discoloration. And I normally just put a pretty light layer down and then work it in with a finger. And what I love about this product is it's one of the few concealers, really kind of the only concealer I've used, that doesn't just immediately settle into my fine lines and emphasize them. I have a lot of trouble with liquid concealers, even though that's kind of the most popular form of concealer. I find with liquid concealers, they always just immediately settle into my under eye lines, and also they often dry out my under eyes. I think it's just that because they're liquid, they often do have some alcohol in them, so that after you apply it, they can dry to a more skin-like finish. but that also in turn kind of dries out your under eyes, or at least dries out my under eyes. So I'm not a fan of those products. And I feel like with this product, because it is kind of a creamy balm-like consistency, it doesn't have as much of that drying effect. So I'm just gonna finish blending this in. I think that's probably good enough. And that's basically all I do in terms of base products on a regular basis. Pre-COVID, if I had a big event, I'd maybe go in with some foundation as well. I can't claim to be an expert on foundations because I pretty much never use them. If I had to list a favorite, I would say that the Hourglass stick foundation was surprisingly really good, in my opinion. But I'm not gonna really make an official favorite because I almost never use foundation and can't really speak to the overall quality. So that is the first set of products down. And I would normally at this point go into eyeshadow, but I'm gonna do a separate video just dedicated to the best of 2020 eyeshadows because otherwise this video is gonna be like an hour or two long. So let's dive instead directly into the face products. So first off, bronzer. This was a really big year for me and bronzer. I had never used bronzer before this year, and then all of a sudden I just had to buy all of the top releases this year, and I'm glad I did because I've really fallen in love with bronzers. And I would say my overall top bronzer of 2020 is definitely the Gucci bronzer. And I have this in the shade 2, which is surprising because I have like shade 4 for my Charlotte Tilbury, for example, which is the tan. But the Gucci bronzer shades are kind of confusing. Shade 1 is obviously the lightest, but then it goes to shade 3 as the second lightest, and then shade 2 is deeper than shade 3. So I kind of bought this on a lark because it took me a really long time to figure out what shade would work for me. And then I was like, I also heard that this has a really strong fragrance and it also has a sheen to it. And those are normally things I don't like in bronzers, but I took a chance on this product and I am so glad that I did because this is by far the best bronzer that I have ever used. And it's just so beautiful. Like, I know some people were complaining, oh, this is like maybe like a, not totally metal, maybe it's aluminum or something like that, or plastic. But I mean, look at this. It is so beautiful. This compact is gorgeous, and I find the fragrance to surprisingly be quite pleasant. And I'm someone who does not like fragrance in my skincare, even in my shampoo and conditioner. I try to avoid it because I have pretty sensitive skin, but this fragrance is so beautiful. It's like lightly floral, but sweet at the same time. Kind of like flowers and candy, but still in a very luxurious way. It's not like, your kind of birthday cake or fruit punch types of smells that are common in lip products. It's much more sophisticated than that. Definitely like a perfume, like a more sophisticated perfume. And what I like about this fragrance is you only smell it when you're applying the bronzer. So it's not like you walk around throughout the day and you get whiffs of it. It's only when you're applying it. So it's not gonna give you a headache. It's not gonna linger. It just gives you an extra nice and luxurious application experience because while you're applying it, you smell this luxurious perfume. So I'm a huge fan, and before I keep rambling on, let me go ahead and start applying this. So I have my my Rephr number 4 brush here. Nice angled brush. Just gonna start applying this. Okay, that was a little much in one fell swoop. But so even though this bronzer is kind of deep upon initial application, I think it blends out really nicely, which is something I love about it as well. And the thing that I really love about it too is the overall tone. I've been really into this year a lot of sort of mauvey, pinky looks. Basically the Divine Rose collection and related color stories. And so I feel like this bronzer has been perfect for that because it does have just that slight bit of kind of pinkiness to it. It's a little cooler tone than a lot of bronzers that might come across as more orange. And so I think this is just a really beautiful shade and quite unique in my collection. So there we go. So you can see, it doesn't look super intense or anything once you blend it out. And you can definitely continue to layer it. It's just very easily workable. That is the bronzer of the year. And it also just has a nice sort of slight sheen to it, which makes it look quite healthy as well. If you're into a slightly more radiant finish, it's not going to, mattify your face. So I do want to say, though, I have 2 honorable mentions in the bronzer category. One is my Charlotte Tilbury bronzer in the shade Tan. First off, this compact is absolutely gorgeous. I originally bought this in the shade Medium, which basically looked like orange Cheeto dust on my face because it was so light. It was very, very, very similar to my skin tone, but just with an orange tinge to it. But because I loved this compact so much, I was like, okay, I need to try another version. So here it is in Tan, and this one is appropriate for my skin tone. And I really like this formula as well. It is very, very different from the Gucci bronzer, but it has its own special perks. So I would say that this bronzer is very, very buildable, so you don't really get as much with each layer, but it's a really good bronzer to use if you like to just use sheer layers to build up. And unlike the Gucci bronzer, it is matte, so if you're more interested in a matte finish, then this is definitely for you. And then it's also much warmer toned. So this one does have a much stronger orange cast to it, but if you're looking for more of that sun-kissed bronze, I think this is definitely the best way to go. Again, for me, the Gucci one is just better for the types of looks I've been doing that have been slightly cooler toned and more mauvey and pink. But on days when I do more of a warm look, I definitely grab for this bronzer. And then the other honorable mention is in my Hourglass Sculpture Ambient let's see, what is this called? Yes, Ambient Lighting Edit. And that is this bronzer over here. And honestly, this is the one that first turned me on to sort of slightly more pinky peachy bronzers. So this one compared to the Mini Edit, which I also have here. So the Mini Edit has more of a golden bronze, and I'm not as much of a fan of this one. It's both too light, and I'm not a huge fan of the golden shimmers in it. But this one is really, really beautiful. And I would say it's actually quite similar in tone to the Gucci bronzer, but it is just much lighter. So I do find I really need to dig my brush into this and build it up in order to get the same level of opacity. So that's why this is not the favorite. But before I got the Gucci bronzer, this was probably my favorite bronzer of the year. And I've probably used this one more just because I've had it longer. So would definitely recommend this as well. And in particular, if you have a fair skin tone, these Hourglass ones are really excellent because if you have fair to like medium tan like myself, you can probably make this one work. For me, I have to build this one up a lot, but it does look quite beautiful when I do that. So those are the bronzers of the year. And I will add the caveat that I just recently tried the Marc Jacobs Omega bronze and really liked that one. It is definitely not as good as the Gucci bronzer, so this is not going to be kicked out of the top ranking anytime soon. But I did just want to mention that I didn't include it in this video because I've only used it once, and so I can't say whether it gets an honorable mention or not. But it is very promising, so stay tuned as I develop more opinions on that bronzer. With bronzers out of the way, let's go into blushes. So for blushes, I would say it was much harder for me to pick just one blush. So I'm gonna have to cheat a little bit, and I have 3 different blushes for kind of different purposes. So sorry, I know that's kind of cheating, but I just had to. I feel like with blushes, because there's so many different colors, it's really hard to compare them. They are just not apples to apples. But I would say, first off, probably like my overall favorite blush formula of the year was the Hourglass formula. And I especially loved this one, which is Mood Flush in the Sculpture Mini Edit. And I just would say, I think of all the blush formulas I've ever tried, the Hourglass one is just the most beautiful. it just applies in such a nice way and is very sheer initially, but very, very buildable, and just you don't have to blend it out. It just looks so beautiful upon application. And let me actually show you guys. So I'm going to continue with that same rougher brush, dig it into this blush shade over here. And you see, it's just, you don't have to work at all in order to blend it in. This formula, which is not one of their swirled together formulas, is especially nice in my opinion because it's a bit more pigmented than their other ones, and it has a subtle sheen to it. So if you're going for a more natural look, you don't necessarily need to grab any highlighter. So, you know, on a just everyday basis, this I think would look really, really beautiful. But you could also add highlighter for that extra dimension and you don't feel like your cheeks are already too highlighted. And I would just contrast that with the two blushes in the larger Sculpture Edit palette. So I also really love this one, which is Mood Exposure, but because it is that swirled formula, it is less pigmented, so I really, really need to build this one up. And then this one over here, which is Vibrant Flush, is swirled with their Strobe formula. And so this is more like a highlighter blush combo. And I find with this shade, it does just lead to a lot of radiance on the cheeks, which can be nice, but I struggle to get enough pigmentation combined with the radiance. And so I find that sometimes after I've built this up enough to see the pigment, I have too much radiance on my skin. So I do like these two as well, but I will say that's why I am more of a fan of the formula in the mini Sculpture Edit. The other formula I've been really, really loving is the M Cosmetics Heaven's Veil blushes. And I have the two shades that they have here. So I first got Magic Hour, and isn't this such a pretty compact? I love their design as well with the baked domed formula and the little mirror there. It's so simple yet so effective. So Magic Hour is like a pinky peach with some golden shimmers, whereas Faded Clementine is more of an orange with golden shimmer. And both of these are just such beautiful formulas when you want a bit more of a shimmery blush. But unlike the Hourglass ones, they do have a decent amount of pigmentation in them. So this is gorgeous if you just want that like glowing from within golden goddess kind of vibe. And I had these before I got these other blushes, and so I've used this for almost a year at this point. And I rarely buy multiples, but I just loved the Magic Hour so much I had to get Faded Clementine. And then now I probably like Faded Clementine even more because the orange is just so unique in my collection. But these are really, really beautiful, and I think quite underrated because I haven't heard a lot of folks talking about these, but the effect they give is just really, really beautiful and youthful. So the last blush I'll mention is my Charlotte Tilbury Cheek to Chic in Pillow Talk Intense. And this is the blush that I probably actually use the most often because I find this to be the most work appropriate formula. It is a really beautiful, more sophisticated muted shade. So on most professional days, I'll just go in the outer rim since it's a matte blush, unlike the other blushes that I showed you today. And so I'll just scatter some of that on my cheeks. In pan, I would say this probably looks very cool toned, but on my skin, it definitely looks more like a rosy copper shade. And so nice and healthy, but still kind of a nude shade. And then on days when I want just a little bit more oomph, I'll add the middle or just focus exclusively on the middle. The nice thing about this intense shade is the middle, even though it looks so much lighter than the outer ring, actually operates as a blush in and of itself. It has enough pigmentation for that. So I feel like with this compact, you essentially get 3 different blushes of varying levels of shimmer. And so that's what I really, really love about this. And I find it just so perfect for an everyday professional basis. So now that we have the blush out of the way, let's go into highlighter. I don't have many highlighters for this year that I've tried. So, take this one with a grain of salt. But I will say, of all the highlighters I tried, that my favorite by by far was this one in the Sculpture Mini Edit. And this one is Champagne Strobe Light. I think this highlight just works in every single situation, any sort of makeup look. And it's a gorgeous highlight that on the one hand is fairly natural, but also a bit more metallic. The honorable mention goes to the other Hourglass Sculpture palette, the shade over here, which is Strobe Powder Glistening Strobe Light. This one is really good if you truly just want a slightly lit from within look, but you don't want to actually look like you have highlighter. For me, most days I prefer the slightly more glitzy look, but again, I think this is a highlighter that provides you some shine, but still looks super, super natural. And just to show you guys it on my skin, let me go in with my Artist Small Brush from Wayne Goss, and I just like to shimmy this over here and then just kind of apply this on the high points. So there you go. You see that really beautiful shine? And I find this so easy to blend in. Like, I never get weird harsh edges, especially with this brush. It just lays down so easily. Like, it doesn't look like a stripe or anything, but you just get that really nice, subtle, but definitely there glow with this highlight. And I also really love this on the brow bone. So I think this is just such a gorgeous formula, and Hourglass powder products, honestly, just they've been killing it. Like, I honestly did not want to like these two so much. So the reason I actually have both of these is I was debating between the two, not sure which one to get. I was like, okay, I'll get both of them and then return the one I don't like as much. And then when I first got them, I actually was going to return both of them because I thought, oh man, these are just like too light for my skin. But then I learned to kind of build them up, and now I'm just like, oh my God, these are must buys. So I've seen these on sale a lot recently as a duo, so you should definitely pick these up if you don't have them already. And I would say even though these might look kind of similar in pan, I've still found them sufficiently different to warrant having both of them. Looking at this palette, so I basically never use finishing powder because I never use foundation, but even with those two removed, I really love this bronzer, and these three are not my favorites, but they're really solid. And especially this one I dip into when I want a more cute, warm-toned look. And then for this one, I love like these two over here. Also, do not use this finishing powder. Not a huge fan of this bronzer, but just these two on the bottom is like worth it for me, honestly. Like, when you consider this guy over here was like, I don't know, $50 or something, these are definitely worth it, at least to me. There we go. Those are all of the complexion products out of the way. And I'm going to do a separate video of my best of 2020 eyeshadow, and then another video with my lip products because there's just so many of them. But, you know, here you go. Here's like a pretty natural makeup look. Not exactly, I guess, what I set out to create today, but, you know, this doubles as a natural makeup tutorial. Just add a little bit of lip gloss or lip balm, and there you go. You'll be good to go. So thank you guys so much for joining me in this first of 3 video series. I originally thought I was just going to do one video, but you know, the moment you start talking about your favorite beauty products, you just realize there's a lot to say. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!